Nah, ini wifi-nya yang eksternal itu aja ya? Cukup aja ya? Cukup ya? Kalau dibuka, jangan.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests and participants, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Penny, Head of Strategic Country Support of the ASEAN-Japan Center. I'm now broadcasting from ASEAN-Japan Center, where you can have a clear view of the iconic Tokyo Tower. Today's weather in Tokyo is cloudy and quite cold, about 13 degrees Celsius. However, this weather cannot affect the warmest welcome we have to all of you to today's event, the hybrid special ASEAN Outlook Indo-Pacific Dialogue Forums. The Dialogue Forum will be held at the ASEAN-Japan Center. Let's go in together. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and participants. Today's ASEAN Outlook Indo-Pacific Dialogue Forum is especially special because we are extremely privileged to host the most prestigious and honorable presence of distinguished professionals, diplomats, economists, and international business persons. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to inform you that next year, Japan and ASEAN will mark the 50 years ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperations. Our dialogue forum today is expected to enhance the cooperation on IOP between ASEAN and Japan, identify key priorities actions toward acceleration of AOIP mainstreaming, specifically in relations to Indonesia-ASEAN chairmanship in 2023. Now, please allow me to begin our program. We now have the honor to kindly invite Your Excellency Ambassador Kiya Masahiko, the Ambassador of Japan to ASEAN, to deliver commemorative remarks. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we are very delighted and honored to receive your remarks. Please kindly proceed, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Kiya Masahiko, a new ambassador of Japan to ASEAN. It is an immense honor to be given an opportunity to make commemorative remarks for this important and timely forum. First of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the ASEAN-Japan Center for hosting this forum, as well as all panelists and participants for joining this event. The Center is making great contributions, particularly for today, to invite panelists from various fields, namely the civil society, academia, industries, and governments, to exchange their diverse views and ideas. Together, we can further strengthen ASEAN-Japan cooperation towards acceleration of ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific AOIP mainstreaming. This forum is timely and relevant for 3 reasons. First, next year is the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation. Today's forum is the very first event to commemorate this long-standing ASEAN-Japan partnership. This is once in 10 years, or once in 50 years indeed. Prime Minister Kishida stated at the International Conference on the Future of Asia in May this year that we will take next year's opportunity to enhance ASEAN-Japan relationship to a new stage. There will be a commemorative summit in Tokyo in December next year, as agreed at the ASEAN-Japan Summit last month. we should never miss this miraculous opportunity. Second, AOIP is gaining greater importance in this region today. Against the background of growing attention to the Indo-Pacific, AOIP was adopted by ASEAN leaders in 2019, and then Japan expressed its support for AOIP in 2020 ahead of other dialogue partners by adopting a joint statement with ASEAN leaders on cooperation on AOIP. In addition, it was just last month that the ASEAN leaders adopted the declaration on mainstreaming 4 priority areas of the AOIP within ASEAN-led mechanisms, which clearly demonstrated ASEAN's enthusiasm for keeping this momentum for further steps. So what happens next? As you may know, Prime Minister Kishida announced at the Shangri-La Dialogue in June this year to lay out a free and open Indo-Pacific plan for peace by next spring. I would like to see constructive inputs to develop our new policy. Third, in today's dialogue, we have multi-stakeholders with various backgrounds. AOIP covers a wide range of issues under 4 pillars, that is, maritime cooperation, connectivity, SDGs, and economic and other possible areas of cooperation. The government of Japan is just one of many actors to work on AOIP. To facilitate concrete actions to accelerate AOIP mainstreaming, we need to engage people from diverse fields and countries. In particular, Indonesia, the chair of ASEAN next year, is making greatest efforts in mainstreaming AOIP. We will support Indonesia's chairmanship next year under the theme ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. I look forward to Mr. Shidato's remarks today. These are the reasons why AOIP mainstreaming is our key agenda, and that this forum is timely and relevant for both ASEAN and Japan. We must note that today's discussion is taking place as we face complex challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, frequent natural disasters, and various conflicts, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine that violates international law principles. This forum is precisely what we need now. We welcome your new ideas to make our Golden Jubilee an ever-growing golden friendship with golden opportunities. The relationship between ASEAN and Japan is a two-way street. We act and proceed together. Let today's dialogue be a good opportunity to learn mutually our experiences to work for the future. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Ambassador Kia Masahiko, for your magnificent remarks. Now, allow me to invite Your Excellencies, Mr. Sidarto Suryodipuro, the Director General of ASEAN Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. His Excellency also a former Indonesia Ambassador to India. Thank you very much for joining us today, and it is our greatest pleasure and privilege to have you and receive your commemorative remarks. Please kindly proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Miss Penny, the announcer and a longtime friend. Greetings to all participants, both in Jakarta and in Tokyo. Greetings from Jakarta. Your Excellency, Ambassador Kia Masahiko, it's a pleasure to see you again on screen. Dr. Hirabayashi Kunihiko, Secretary General of ASEAN-Japan Center, and other distinguished participants and Excellency. I would like to thank the ASEAN-Japan Center for organizing this dialogue. It is a pertinent event at the outset of our commemoration of 50 years of ASEAN-Japan relationship. It is also a pertinent theme that underscores a new era of the relationship. In the decades that followed the establishment of ASEAN-Japan relationship 50 years ago, the relationship helped strengthen regional stability and prosperity. ASEAN benefited from trade and investment with Japan. For a long time, Japan was the #1 trading and investment partner of ASEAN member states, helping to establish a regional economic partnership and value chain in the process. Japan has been a key development assistance partner, while ASEAN, for its part, provided an important source of market material and helped to create stability, prosperity, and predictability for the Asia-Pacific region. The world of today is fundamentally different from 50 years ago, but in many ways are not unfamiliar. I'm sure we have all made analysis of the region and the world today. I will not dwell on it. But I would say at this stage, and you may agree, that a fundamental question for ASEAN and Japan is how do we wrestle with the Indo-Pacific region, whether we want to engage in deeper cooperation and integration or deeper division and polarization. And Ambassador Kia had also touched on these issues. ASEAN's response is clear. It is a response based on ASEAN's geographical, institutional, diplomatic, and economic centrality. It is also a response consistent with Southeast Asia's role, serving as a bridge between Northeast and South Asia, between civilizations, and between geopolitical powers. It is a response based on ASEAN's open and inclusive nature, one which must be based on clear rules. And in modern world, in modern history, those rules are international law, and in particular, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea plays a particularly important role for a region that is characteristically maritime. The ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific is ASEAN's response to rising tension and division. ASEAN will work to strengthen its unity, centrality, and prosperity. And this is reflected clearly in Indonesia's theme for ASEAN chairmanship next year in 2023, a theme of ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. Japan's outlook, Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific, and the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific are different concepts. They have different purposes, yet they share important commonalities. And these are commonalities that we seek to build upon, as Ambassador Kia had also indicated. It is on commonalities based on the importance of the Indo-Pacific region as a driver of growth. Both ASEAN and Japan want to see a region that continues to grow based on clear rules of international law. Both want to see a stronger ASEAN unity and centrality that is open, inclusive, and prosperous. The AOIP, for its part, does not aim to exclude or contain any regional or global player in the evolving Indo-Pacific concept. For ASEAN, the Indo-Pacific is about strengthening regional architecture through the existing ASEAN-led mechanisms. And it is within this context, there is much room for collaboration between Japan and ASEAN. And I propose that we focus on two things for next year, both within the context of Indo-Pacific and in the context of 50 years of Japan-ASEAN relationship. First is in the development and strengthening of the new ASEAN-Japan economic partnership. Our leaders, as Ambassador Kia alluded to, have expressed the desire to establish a new vision for economic partnership. This was made clear at the recent ASEAN-Japan Summit, and it would include supply chain resilience, digitalization, human resources development, and connectivity, among others. These are areas that will support the aims of the AOIP. Critically, the new vision should also provide an environment conducive for open and inclusive cooperation with all partners, and in particular on the mainstreaming of the 4 priority areas. Second, and more specifically, ASEAN under Indonesia's chairmanship is initiating the Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Forum, one of our flagship activities in 2023, and concrete effort to realize the aims of the AOIP. The forum, the Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Forum, will focus on 3 relevant topics: digital and smart cities, sustainable and green development, and financing. It will emphasize the spirit of cooperation and collaboration in achieving closely integrated and interconnected region of the Indo-Pacific. It will contribute to the discussion on connecting the connectivities of the Indo-Pacific, as it will to the development of the master plan of ASEAN connectivity beyond 2025. Above all, it will maintain ASEAN's resiliency as the engine of global growth, in line with our theme of epicentrum of growth. The forum will invite multi-stakeholder participation. It will provide a space for business and industry to connect with real needs of the people of the Indo-Pacific. The participation of the Japanese government, private sector, and relevant financial institution in this forum would be critical. That participation would be consistent with Japan's role in the past 50 years and earlier, as I mentioned at the outset. Today's discussion is unique with wide-ranging participation, including from the business sector and academia. Taking full advantage of the various perspectives that will be presented here, I believe we will learn more on how the Indo-Pacific could be developed based on the strength of ASEAN-Japan partnership. The Indo-Pacific concept that goes beyond geopolitical and geostrategic concept into a concept that supports a dynamic and prosperous Indo-Pacific. And I look forward to learning more on the course and the discussion during this dialogue. On that note, I wish you all a fruitful discussion and a successful meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Ambassador Suryodipuro, for your extremely insightful message. Thank you once again. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will move to the panel discussion sessions. Please allow me to introduce our panelists, a facilitator and commentator one by one. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Fitra Hastiadi, Executive Director of Next Policy Indonesia. Dr. Fitra is also alumni of the Waseda University and Keio University of Japan. Thank you, Dr. Fitra, for joining us today. Please take your seats. Our next distinguished panelist is Mr. Miyaji Shinji. Welcome, Mr. Miyaji Shinji, and thank you very much for your coming. Mr. Miyaji Shinji is a chairman, Committee on Asia and Oceania, Keidanren, the largest business federation in Japan. Also Senior Executive Vice President of Asahi Glass Corporations. I would like to invite Professor Shinoda Kunihuko. Thank you, Professor Shinoda, for your joining us today. Professor Shinoda is professor from Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, GRIPS in Tokyo, and former Deputy DG for Trade Policy in Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry of Japan. Please take your seat, Professor Shinoda. Thank you so much. May I now also to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Ngurah Swajaya. His Excellency Ambassador is a special advisor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Regional Diplomacy. Ambassador Swajaya is supposed to be here at the ASEAN-Japan Center with us. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, he is not able to visit Japan this time. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your time today, and it is a pleasure to see you on the screen. I wish you well today. We are also fortunate to have a commentator for our Today Dialogue Forum, Professor Ishikawa Koichi, Director of ASEAN Study Group in Tokyo. He is also former Chief Researcher and Director of the International Economics at JETRO. He is participating through online. Thank you, Ishikawa Sensei, for your joining us with us today. We are also glad to have our special facilitator for the panel discussion, Ms. Joanne Lin, Coordinator of Institute of South Asian Studies, Chuseok Isak Institute, Singapore. Joanne is also former Assistant Director, External Relations under ASEAN Political Security Community at the ASEAN Secretariat Jakarta for more than 6 years. Welcome, Ms. Lin. This afternoon, we are also glad to have the representative Young Generation G students and present at the ASEAN-Japan Center. They would like to hear from the panelists about the AOIP, what the AOIP means to them, and how they could contribute to the AOIP corporations. Later, our facilitator Joanne will introduce them to the audience and facilitate the mini discussion with them. Before we start, there are two things. First, we would like to apologize in advance in case of any technical failure, although we are avoiding any failure as much as possible. And secondly, we would like to take the screenshot of all of these speakers in one screen. So Your Excellencies and the Professor, please turn on your camera and video. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Now I would like to pass the floor to the facilitator, Ms. Joanne Lin, who will facilitate the panel. Joanne, please proceed the discussion. Thank you, Joanne.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you from a very cozy and warm ASEAN-Japan Center, although it is winter out there. And I think this is a very cozy atmosphere for a warm discussion. And I hope that you do not get distracted by the people walking outside, although we want to show you the live atmosphere. So it is my pleasure to be invited by the center today to facilitate this IGA special dialogue on the acceleration of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, and in particular how we can mainstream the AOIP to achieve greater peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. So today I am very happy to facilitate the views from not only the government official, but also the industrial players, the civil society, and the academia to discuss ways in which ASEAN and Japan could collaborate strategically to expedite the implementation of the AOIP to bring greater benefits for our people. So for the audiences from many sectors who are not familiar with what is the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, it is actually a document that was adopted by the ASEAN leaders in 2019 to help ASEAN navigate the increasingly complex regional architecture amidst the major power rivalry. So it is also natural for ASEAN to have this outlook because it is the only region apart from Australia that actually straddles between the Indian and the Pacific Oceans. But I think fundamentally it is to facilitate cooperation with external partners in key areas such as maritime cooperation, connectivity, sustainable development, and economic cooperation, among many other areas of cooperation. So at the same time, it is actually also to safeguard and preserve ASEAN centrality in the regional architecture. So Japan is actually an important power in the Indo-Pacific. So as such, Japan makes an excellent partner, for ASEAN to advance cooperation in the AOIP. So in fact, Japan is actually the first country, to subscribe to the notion of the Indo-Pacific. So it was an idea that was mooted by the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2007 when he spoke about the confluence of the two seas. So this was, of course, followed by Japan's announcement of its free and open Indo-Pacific strategy in 2016 to promote a stable, prosperous, and a rule-based regional order. So Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific concept and the AOIP shares many fundamental principles in promoting a rule-based order, openness, and good governance, among many other important values, as what Ambassador Sihato has just mentioned earlier in his remarks. So with the many shared interests in the Indo-Pacific, the leaders of ASEAN and Japan adopted the joint statement on cooperation on the AOIP to strengthen cooperation in 2020. So it was actually the first dialogue partner to actually do that, even before India and Australia had that sort of statement. So following that, we had 89 cooperation projects that were identified, and I'm sure that we can talk about that later. So just last month, ASEAN took another step forward to accelerate the implementation of the AOIP when ASEAN leaders adopted the declaration on mainstreaming the 4 priority areas of the AOIP within ASEAN-led mechanisms during the ASEAN summit in Phnom. So this declaration also encourages external partners to support and undertake substantive, practical, and tangible, cooperation through with ASEAN through programs, projects, or activities. And these activities are encouraged to be conducted through ASEAN-led mechanisms like ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3, the East Asia Summit, ASEAN Regional Forum, and the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, which I'm sure many of you would have read about that, at least in the papers. So this platform is actually very timely for us to discuss the ways and means to accelerate and implement the AOIP as Indonesia prepares to take over the chairmanship of ASEAN next year, as we have just heard earlier. So as you know, Indonesia has played a very instrumental role in the AOIP. So Japan will also celebrate its 50th anniversary, or we call the Jubilee, Golden Jubilee next year. So it is actually very timely that we discuss this, and it is important for both sides to forge a greater strategic alignment and stronger cooperation towards a comprehensive strategic partnership, which I hope that Japan will get it next year. So with all this introduction and background, So please allow me now to dive into our much awaited panel discussion to hear from our very distinguished and eminent panel of experts. So I would now like to start with Ambassador Nura Swajaya, Ambassador Swajaya, if you are online. We miss you here, but I'm glad that you can still join us online. So please allow me to pose the first question to you, Ambassador. So now that ASEAN leaders have adopted the declaration on the mainstreaming of the AOIP, please let us know what other strategic direction is actually needed to realize or materialize the AOIP, including cooperation with external partners like Japan. And perhaps you can also share with us Indonesia's plan or concrete steps to operationalize the AOIP during its chairmanship of ASEAN next year. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly,
Okay.
Ambassador, yes.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the ASEAN Japan Center for having me to participate here. And also I would like to extend my apology for not able to attend the meeting in person, as I think despite the cold weather, I really like Tokyo during winter. So I miss that opportunity. But anyway, let me once again thanking and also welcoming all of the panelists to this discussion. Let me respond to your questions very, very briefly. Ambassador Alto has already mentioned you also. The outlook is really a strategy that is built by ASEAN in order to promote what we believe in ASEAN as culture of dialogue and also culture of peace, especially in the middle of this geopolitical contestation and also the uncertainty caused by geopolitical rivalries as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. So as an outlook, this strategy provides a strategic compass for ASEAN in navigating the complex situation affected by the geopolitical rivalries. It is crucial, of course, for Indonesia and ASEAN to elaborate further, as what you mentioned earlier, to mainstream the main areas of cooperation into concrete activities as well as concrete projects in order to further strengthen the culture of dialogue, culture of cooperation, as well as culture of peace on areas that provide mutual benefits to all participants. At the moment, there has been a number of concrete projects to synergize. Take, for example, the ASEAN Outlook and the Japanese strategy on Indo-Pacific, such as on the areas of connectivity and also infrastructure. Ambassador Arthur elaborated earlier the suggestion. I think that is also something that we can pursue together, particularly when we are talking about ASEAN-Japan. In addition to that, the US-led Indo-Pacific economic framework, for instance, is also provide another concrete initiative involving countries in the Indo-Pacific region to engage in economic cooperation that is mutually benefiting all of the members of the Indo-Pacific economic framework, where Indonesia is also one of the founding fathers, together with Japan, with a number of ASEAN countries, although this is not yet included all of the ASEAN member states. But I think this is, again, the areas and the concrete activities that we can elaborate further on the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Another example, ASEAN and EU are also synergizing a concrete initiative for mutual interests and also for common benefits in a very strong spirit of mutual respect and shared values. This concrete activity is just also endorsed by the ASEAN leaders and the EU leaders during the commemorative summit just took place a couple of days in Brussels. So these concrete activities could form building blocks for dialogue and partnership in a challenging and complex situation in the region. As the chair of ASEAN, it is of course incumbent upon Indonesia to translate the outlook into concrete plan of action that will be utilized as concrete and strategic guidance to further promote dialogues and cooperation. And I think dialogue and cooperation is the only options for engagement with different countries in the Indo-Pacific, with also common objective in the face of the challenging situation that we are now facing. I think in the future, we are still going to face a similar situation as well. Finally, ASEAN is currently also in the middle of process of elaborating and talking to all of the dialogue partners that has already endorsed the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific on how we will be able on specific thematic issues, on specific priorities that will be developed further from the four main areas that is in the elaborated in the ASEAN outlook in the Indo-Pacific. So this should also be, I think this is also in line with the ASEAN current process as well now in developing its post-2025 vision. So this is really a long-term vision that we would like to undertake. On the second question of what steps should be undertaken by ASEAN member states. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of examples on how to synchronize the outlook with its dialogue partner strategy through project and activities, especially on infrastructure and connectivity with Japan, and also infrastructure and connectivity with the European Union, all of the members of the European Union, as we agree that there will be an efforts by ASEAN and EU to synergize the strategy, EU strategy on Indo-Pacific and ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. ASEAN could also elaborate further the four priority areas into concrete projects and initiatives, where those priorities could be undertaken by multiple ASEAN partners, not only on ASEAN +1 mechanism, but also it could be included in the ASEAN +3, ICC summit, and other mechanisms as alluded to by the facilitator earlier. One of the potential activities to be undertaken could be on the areas of infrastructure. Ambassador Arto mentioned about the ASEAN, the Indonesia's initiative to organize the forum for infrastructure with the thematic issues that has already been elaborated next year during our chairmanship. And I think we could also use the momentum of the ASEAN-Japan 50th commemorative summit next year to strengthen further, to elaborate further, to develop concrete cooperations. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, that I think this outlook for ASEAN and also for Indonesia is really a strategy for us to nurture, to strengthen the culture of dialogue, the culture of peace, which is also enshrined in the ASEAN Charter, especially in the challenging situation that we are facing now. So I would like to stop here to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador Swajaya. We definitely will be looking forward to the concrete plan of action to operationalize the AOIP, and hopefully this can be a deliverable of the Indonesia chairmanship. So, Ambassador, I have a follow-up question. On a broader level, what can ASEAN or ASEAN member states do to enhance the AOIP's relevance in the region that is increasingly affected by the major power risks? And we know that one thing for sure is ASEAN doesn't want to take sides. So, what can we do, to make AOIP even more relevant? Please, over to you.
Yes, I think, the strategy or the outlook is certainly is not at all mean that this is about neutrality or this is about not taking sides, but this is a proactive strategy of ASEAN to be to promote dialogue and interactions in the region for durable peace and stability in the region, as well as for the prosperity of the people. Despite the situation that we are also facing a lot of challenges as well as disputes. Now, to respond to your questions, I think the events such as this, organized by the ASEAN-Japan Center, is not only timely, but I think very important. As you mentioned earlier, Ms. Penny mentioned earlier, that you also brought the younger generations, the students, for them to understand that this is certainly part of the ASEAN proactive strategy to be a positive contributor for peace and stability in the region, as well as for the prosperity of the people. But at the same time also, it reflects the ASEAN, the meaning of the ASEAN centrality. So bringing this to the wider audience, especially the students, and also to involve all of the three pillars of the ASEAN community, not only in the political security, not only among politicians or decision makers, but also to bring this to the business center, business population, the business community, as the panelists also comprise of a number of representatives from business. I think this is also something that we need to start doing in a more active way. And of course, we hope to see this more and more in the Indonesia's chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023. You know that in Indonesia itself, we have around 69 universities that has an ASEAN center. I think this is good for us to bring this outlook for them to understand, because they are going to be the future leaders of the region, the future leaders of Indonesia. To understand this, to bring this to the wider audience, I think is something that we would like to commend. So I would like to commend the Secretary General of the ASEAN-Japan Center for organizing this timely events and also discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador Swajaya. Yes, we agree that partnership remains important, and next year will be an excellent, opportunity for us to step up engagements, especially amongst the youth or the business community, as you have suggested. So thank you very much. I will come back to you later while I move to the other panelists here. So now let me turn to Professor Shinoda. So Professor Shinoda, can you share with us the key takeaways and the outcomes of the recently concluded 40th and 41st summits, in particular the 25th ASEAN-Japan Summit, which took place in November last month? We would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. John Lee.
Yes.
At the 41st ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN Leaders' Declaration on mainstreaming 4 priority areas of AOIP within the ASEAN-led mechanism was adopted. And it is important to note that the 4 priority areas of the AOIP, namely maritime cooperation, connectivity, SDGs and economic and other possible areas of cooperation will be the focus of cooperation between ASEAN and the ASEAN dialogue partners. In addition, projects selected based on the 4 priority areas of the AOIP and the agreed list of criteria on mainstreaming the AOIP will be identified as AOIP implementing project, which will be compiled into a list of projects to be pursued. So could you proceed to the next slide? Next. And in addition, ASEAN countries will explore developing an ASEAN roadmap for promoting AOIP in the future. And this is expected to lead to the steady promotion of projects with a lead country in each field and project. Next, I will touch upon the important outcomes of the 25th ASEAN-Japan Summit. In 2020, ASEAN and Japan issued the joint statement of the 23rd ASEAN-Japan Summit on cooperation on ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. To further reinforce their partnerships to enhance practical cooperation and synergy in the 4 areas as outlined in the AOIP. And based on this joint statement, Japan has been promoting various cooperative projects that contribute to the realization of the AOIP since 2020. At the 25th ASEAN-Japan Summit, Japan published the progress report on totally 89 its cooperation projects on the AOIP. I believe that Japanese cooperation project on the AOIP is a cooperation initiative well linked to the ASEAN's mainstreaming 4 priority areas of the AOIP. So now let's take a look at the major examples of Japanese cooperation projects in the AOIP's 4 priority areas. As for maritime cooperation, there are such cooperation projects as vessel traffic service operator training, a training program for public international law on law of the sea and peaceful settlement of international dispute and promotion of action against maritime plastic debris. And with regard to strengthening connectivity, Japan is supporting the development of ASEAN's hard and soft infrastructure through the ASEAN-Japan Connectivity Initiative, and it's also providing support for the establishment of the network of smart city development in ASEAN to help solve ASEAN's urban problems. Connectivity also includes people-to-people connectivity, which will be discussed later. And with respect to SDGs, Japan has pledged its full support for the establishment of the ASEAN Center for Public Health Emergencies and Emerging Diseases and contributed $50 million to the Japan-ASEAN Integration Fund for this purpose. In order to promote sustainable agriculture production and food systems, Japan will support ASEAN countries through international collaboration to introduce initiative and sustainable agricultural practices and technologies, such as digital tool machineries and pest control tools. Finally, as for economic and other possible areas of cooperation, the ASEAN-Japan Economic Resilience Action Plan contains more than 50 projects proposed by both Japan and ASEAN. Projects such as strengthening supply chain resilience, providing financial support for Asia digital transformation, and promoting trade facilitation are making progress under the action plan. ASEAN-Japan Cybersecurity Capacity Building Center was established in 2018 to contribute to human resources development on cybersecurity in ASEAN by conducting a series of exercises such as cyber defense exercise with recurrence, digital forensics, and malware analysis for officials of government agencies and operators of essential infrastructure in ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Shinoda, for the very comprehensive outcome of the many activities under the 4 key areas of cooperation of the AOIP. And I am actually very impressed that you have 89 projects. I haven't heard of another dialogue partner that has so many projects. And I guess this is something to be commended. And we look forward to the full implementation of all this. So, Professor Shinoda, after listening to Ambassador Swajaya's response on operationalizing the AOIP, can you also share with us from the Japanese perspective on how the civil society, the academia, the industry, and government in ASEAN and Japan may also cooperate to mainstream the AOIP to further promote the peace, stability, and the prosperity of the region?
Thank you. And for the sake of peace, stability, and prosperity for the people of the Indo-Pacific region, Japan has launched the FOIP, ASEAN has launched the AOIP, and ASEAN dialogue partners such as the United States, Australia, and India have also proposed their own Indo-Pacific initiatives. Until now, Indo-Pacific cooperation has focused on track 1 cooperation at the government level, but from now on, it is also necessary to strengthen activities at the track 2 level, including universities, research institutes, and industry. In order to promote cooperation based on the AOIP, it is necessary to promote cooperation between industry, government, and academia at the East Asia Summit. However, as you can see from this table, there are forums for industry, government, academias in ASEAN Plus 3, APEC, and G20, but not in the EAS to promote AOIP. And in the future, it would be desirable to establish, so could you proceed to the next slide? In the future, it will be desirable to establish an organization such as the AOIP Vision Group with the participation of universities and research institutes from the East Asia Summit participating countries, international organizations such as ARIA and the ASEAN Secretariat to make policy recommendations to the East Asia Summit regarding cooperation in the 4 AOIP priority areas. Next, please. And GRIPS has held 2 international webinars in November 2021 and July 2022 to discuss concrete Indo-Pacific cooperation for the realization of AOIP with the participation of university and research institutes from East Asia Summit's participating countries in cooperation with Indonesia, CSIS, and Singapore, RSIS. Next page, please. Earlier this month, with the cooperation of Indonesia FCCI, GRIPS also held an international webinar on the realization of the Indo-Pacific cooperation under the AOIP with the participation of researchers from ASEAN and its dialogue partners. I hope that many more track 2 forums will be held in the future to materialize AOIP cooperation, including the special IGA dialogue for actions this time. And another track 2 forum on Indo-Pacific cooperation involving industry is the Indo-Pacific Business Forum organized by USTDA. The 5th meeting will be held on January 12, 2023, in cooperation with the government of the United States and Japan, with Keidan and Japan as a partner. In the future, for example, an Indo-Pacific Business Advisory Council could be established on the basis of ASEAN Business Advisory Council and the Joint Business Councils, in which industry from the ASEAN dialogue partners participate to develop policy recommendations for the Indo-Pacific cooperation by industry. Thank you very much.
Yes, Thank you, Professor Shinoda, for that many fresh ideas. So that is why we always need to talk to also the academia and the industry, because they give us new ideas. And I'm sure the AOIP Vision Group, as you mentioned, the Indo-Pacific Advisory Council, I hope that ASEAN can take this seriously in their consideration. And of course, track 2 cooperation will be very important. And maybe we can also involve the ISIS Yusof Ishak Institute, where I came from, to be a part of it. So thank you again, Professor Shinoda. Now I would like to turn to Dr. Fitra. So Dr. Fitra, do you see the ongoing regional cooperation such as the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, and also the US-led Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that Ambassador Swajaya has mentioned earlier, that was being launched this year, as being compatible with the AOIP? And do you think these regional economic instruments can help to advance the AOIP's goals?
Okay, thank you, Joe. So,
Yes.
So under the perspective of Jagdish Bhagawati, so Bhagawatian view about this kind of regional scheme is actually we are seeing that in the future there will be some kind of spaghetti ball or noodle ball effect, because the regional cooperation, regional trade and economic cooperation is creating this so-called crisscrossing attitude. Yeah, so it's getting messier and messier. But if we take from another perspective, from the Baldwinian view, which is actually quite positive, since we don't have any multilateralism ongoing in concrete way, so we need the second best alternative, the second best effect, which is actually this kind of the regional cooperation. So the idea is how to make this regional scheme to become not to become the stumbling block, but to become the building blocks of the next regional cooperation, bilateral cooperation, or even multilateral cooperation. So the focal point of creating such scheme is actually, from my point of view, is the lowest common denominators is the economic argument. So if we see it from that perspective, so the shared view, the shared interest to become how we can actually connect the RCEP, the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership, even the IPEF, all of that are actually very much entangled within economic cooperation. So, and this is very much timely, because under the post-COVID recovery period, so we are actually trying to make extra collaboration to each other within regional or bilateral scheme. This is what I told the Minister of Trade in 2020, to escape from the pandemic, to escape from recession, we need a stronger will to cooperate each other, and this will be actually the oil, the engine that can actually engine the whole economic growth within the region.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Dr. Fitra, for substantiating your answers with some academic views. And of course, I agree that indeed multilateralism is the way to go. And I hope that ASEAN will continue to serve as a hub for that and as a building block, for future economic or regional cooperation. So can you also share with us what sort of lessons we can learn from ASEAN's economic cooperation that can inspire the AOIP?
So ASEAN is just like a sponge that can adapt and also absorb. So since being established in 1967, so that is actually the ASEAN way. We can go right, we can go left, we can stay in the middle. So that is actually ASEAN. But from the economic stand of view, from the economic front, we are actually going nowhere. So if you see the figure of intra-regional trade share, now we are seeing little progress of what have much been expected since 2011. So I remember back in Tokyo in 2011, the late General Secretary Surin Pitsuwan at that time, within a teleconference, he said that ASEAN will try to achieve 30% of intra-regional trade share. But now in 2022, it's still around 25%. So in that way, we need the pull factor. ASEAN alone is going nowhere, but we need the pull factor. Now, what are the pull factors? Yeah, the ASEAN Plus, as you mentioned before, we are going heavily intensified with the Indo-Pacific and also the RCEP itself. ASEAN Plus 3 concept, which is actually very much entangled with ASEAN Plus 6 eventually. Post-TPP, we have IPF and so on and so forth. So that is actually the pull factor. We can actually leverage our economic capacity if we collaborate and if we have this so-called elite countries that can create the spillover effect to most of ASEAN countries, which is, by the way, most of ASEAN countries still very much developing countries. So we need actually that kind of spillover effect. What also can we learn from this, for example, the Japan production network? So we can call it the Akamatsu flying geese model. Under the Akamatsu flying geese model, previously we have also the second tier and the third tier countries. China, Taiwan, Hong Kong was actually very much the support system of the Japanese production network. But we are seeing today, now there's the support system is now becoming much more independent and becoming much more established because of the spillover effect from that production network process. So in a way that in the future, we can actually also hoping that ASEAN countries can absorb that kind of the spillover and knowledge spillover effect in a way that we can eventually establish our own production network in a very efficient manner. So yeah, that is actually the pull factor because yeah, we need other countries that we need to absorb and we need to adapt.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fitra. Yes, I mean, I do agree that there is definitely still potential for ASEAN to tap in, especially to boost the intra-ASEAN trade, right? We should at least reach 30%, as you mentioned. So hopefully the AOIP can bring ASEAN to the next level of competitiveness, and then also to have the pull factor so that we can absorb every, overflowing from the other countries. So thank you very much for that explanation. So now let me turn to our final panelist, Mr. Miyagi, who is a leading expert in the industry, and I'm very looking forward to hear from you. So Mr. Miyagi, from the KDARIAN, which is the Business Federation point of view, how can the industry, the government, civil society, and academia in ASEAN and Japan collaborate to mainstream economic cooperation under the AOIP, such as strengthening connectivity, which is so important. We've been hearing about it, supply chain resilience, enhancing inclusive digital transformation, and promoting a sustainable and inclusive free trade agreements in the region. Mr. Miyagi, please.
はい、ご質問ありがとうございます。日本企業はですね、本当に長い年にわたりまして、この事業活動を通じて、ASEAN との貿易、投資関係を進化、拡大させてまいりました。皆さんご存知の通りでございます。今ではですね、大変多くの日本企業が ASEAN に製造拠点や販売拠点、研究開発拠点を設けております。また製造業にとどまらず、金融をはじめ、多くのサービス業も ASEAN でビジネスを展開しております。こうした事業を通じまして、ASEAN の経済発展に貢献するとともに、人材の育成にも積極的に取り組んでまいりました。 新型コロナウイルス感染症の拡大によりまして、世界経済は大きな影響を受けました。しかしながら、ASEAN はですね、引き続き世界で最も成長が期待される地域の一つでありまして、マーケットとしての重要性もさらに増していくと思っております。従いまして、日本企業にとって、ASEAN はですね、主要なパートナーであり続け、これまで構築してきた関係を一層強化、発展させていくことが必要だと考えております。現在、国際情勢は不透明感を増しております。その中で、法の支配、自由貿易の推進などの、価値観をですね、共有する ASEAN との連携は、より一層重要性を増していくものと思います。そのため、経済界といたしましても、AOIP と FOIP のですね、連携は極めて重要な課題でありまして、2020年、日本と ASEAN が採択しました AOIP 協力についての第23回日 ASEAN 首脳会議共同声明によるありますですね、日 ASEAN AOIP 協力を進めていくことが求められていると思います。経団連ではですね、昨年6月ですね、に ASEAN とのさらなる関係強化のため、新時代の日 ASEAN 関係、連携と競争による持続可能な社会の実現に向けてと題します政策提言を公表いたしました。提言ではですね、1に連結性強化に向けたハード、ソフト両面のですね、社会資本整備、2つ目に持続可能な成長の実現、3つ目にデジタル技術の活用、4つ目に人材育成、5つ目に人的交流というですね、5つの柱について日本と ASEAN が連携、競争を進めるということを謳っております。具体的には、例えば ASEAN 域内の連結性強化に向けてですね、日本と ASEAN が質の高いインフラ整備における協力を継続することが重要であります。また、新型コロナウイルスが世界的に拡大する中で、デジタルトランスフォーメーションの重要性が再認識されたわけでございます。デジタル分野におきましても、ASEAN との間で ICT を利活用しましたスマートシティの形成などですね、先端的な取り組みを加速することも大きな課題だと思います。また、中国、韓国を合わせた RCEP がですね、発行したことも地域における貿易、投資の推進に大きな意味を持つというふうに考えております。経団連の提言で掲げました5つの柱に関しては、日 ASEAN AOIP 協力に掲げられた項目と軌を一にするものでありまして、今後経済界としましても ASEAN との連携競争を進めてまいりたいというふうに思っております。ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Mr. Miyagi. I believe that a Japanese company really has a lot to offer to ASEAN countries, as you mentioned, and it's not only providing capital, but also the much needed human resource development. So ASEAN has benefited a lot from what you mentioned, connectivity, digital, and cutting edge technologies from Japan. So this brings me to the next question that I have for you. Can you also share your views on how new technologies or business models in Japan may be leveraged to solve the economic and social issues or challenges, such as some gaps in connectivity, income inequalities, or even the climate and environmental challenges which we hear about all the time, through ASEAN-Japan cooperation on mainstreaming the AOIP?
はい、ですね、経団連では昨年6月に公表しました、成長戦略においてですね、サステイナブルな資本主義の実現の重要性というものを指摘しております。気候変動問題への対応はですね、 その中心的な課題の一つであると同時にですね、国際社会が直面する最重要課題でもありまして、国際的な連携が不可欠であるというふうに思います。経団連ではですね、2050年のカーボンニュートラルの実現に向けまして、政府と一体となってですね、グリーン成長を加速するということを主張しております。ASEAN ではですね、国によって温室効果ガスが多くですね、排出するエネルギーに依存しておりまして、再生可能エネルギー等へのトランジションを支援していく必要があるというふうに認識しております。こうした中でですね、日本政府はアジアエネルギートランジションイニシアティブやですね、アジアゼロエミッション共同体構想というのを推進しております。経済界といたしましても、ASEAN のですね、現状を踏まえながら、地球規模の課題であります温室効果ガスの削減とですね、カーボンニュートラルの推進に向けて、我が国、企業が有する省エネ、再生可能エネルギー、水素などの環境エネルギー技術やデジタル技術など脱炭素化に貢献し得る多種多様な手段を活用しまして、ASEAN のトランジションを支援していくということが非常に重要であるというふうに考えております。ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Mr. Miyagi. I think you have made some very important points, and I'm sure ASEAN will be able to benefit from the many green initiatives of Japan, including in energy transition and achieving zero emission, as you have mentioned. So now that we have heard the first round from all panelists, I think I have just one follow-up question for each of the panelists. So I would now like to turn back to Ambassador Swajaya. I hope that, yes, thank you. I hope you are still with us. Yes. So Ambassador, as Indonesia will be the chair of ASEAN next year, as you might be excited about that, can you share with us how Japan can support Indonesia's leadership role to strengthen the ASEAN community building efforts? You have mentioned the importance of continuing building the ASEAN community earlier.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, ASEAN and Indonesia and Japan long-term partnership is based on solid foundation of mutual respect and shared values. This should be utilized further to strengthen the ASEAN-Japan strategic partnership. And as I mentioned earlier, cooperation across all of the three pillars should be mutually reinforcing. So a region without peace and stability will not also have an economic growth. A region without economic growth also going to suffer a lot in this geopolitical situation. So I really support what has already been mentioned by our colleague from Kedandren and also Dr. Fitria. Concerning utilizing the economic cooperations as one of the instrument or one of the concrete activities in the implementation of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, because through economic cooperations that could be elaborated in the context of infrastructure, connectivity, green economy, sustainable development, energy transition, you name it. And also, I think very important when we are talking about the supply chain resiliency, for example. Dr. Fitra mentioned earlier about the different tier that the Japanese industries considers countries around the region for their industrial hub. So we have to also understand that ASEAN has more than 600 population, is growing potential market, but at the same time, also has young generations that are very quick to adopt and also to adapt, especially when we are talking about digital technology. I think this will certainly provide a good basis for ASEAN and Japan, especially utilizing the momentum of the 50th anniversary next year. Perhaps, I would like to suggest to our colleague from K-Brand rather than, but also the ASEAN business community, rather than only organizing a commemorative summit. I think we should also organize something like the B20 of the G20 that was very successful in bringing all of the industries to discuss together, which is going to be mutually reinforcing as well as what will be the outcome of the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit next year. So despite the situation will still be unpredictable and a lot of challenges, but we are also at the same time excited to see how the commitment from ASEAN and Japan on how to move forward in our partnership in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, certainly we would like to encourage Japanese company, to make use of the ASEAN's growing market, especially we have a pool of many young people and a very competitive production base. Yes, I think the business summit next year, is an excellent idea, like the B20, as you mentioned. So hopefully ASEAN Japan Center will take in that very good suggestion. So now coming to a more serious note for Professor Shinoda, is back to the political landscape. So we understand that the political landscape is in Indo-Pacific is getting more complex. You will hear it when you're on the news every day, and it's rapidly changing. So in this sort of environment, how can ASEAN and Japan find some strategic alignment to accelerate the mainstreaming of the AOIP under the Indonesia's chairmanship next year? Please share with us some ideas.
Thank you, Ms. Lin. And in the complicated and dynamic geopolitical regional situation, such as the US-China confrontation, pandemic, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it is necessary to achieve stability of the international order and promotion of international cooperation in the Pacific region on the basis of AOIP. The year 2023 will be a milestone year when Indonesia, the proponent of AOIP, will take the ASEAN chairmanship. Indonesia should seek to materialize not only an outlook, but also a vision and cooperation on the Indo-Pacific in order to strategically involve ASEAN dialogue partners in the AOIP. In addition, 2023 is the 50th anniversary of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation, and Japan plans to compile policy recommendations and the vision of the Council of Experts. The direction of cooperation and concrete cooperation program under AOIP should be set out with a view to the next 10 years. Specifically speaking, it is necessary to concretize the mechanism for promoting AOIP, for example, setting up a promotion organization and fund within ASEAN. And it is also necessary to designate the countries in charge of cooperation in individual areas and the implementation schedule by establishing a roadmap for promoting AOIP. And the holding of large-scale events involving industry, government, and academia related to the AOIP could also be considered. For example, Indonesia was originally scheduled to host the Indo-Pacific Infrastructure and Connectivity Forum in July 2020, and a similar event could be held next year. I'm very happy to hear that Mr. Shidoharuto mentioned that Indonesia would explore the possibility of hosting Indo-Pacific Forum, Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Forum this year. And in addition, I would like to touch upon the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, so-called IPEF, negotiation which began this year. And it is necessary to expand the number of participating countries in the future, including some ASEAN countries that have not yet joined. And while it is difficult for the United States to open its market through tariff elimination and reductions, it is necessary to make it beneficial to ASEAN by further strengthening supply chains and expanding financial and technical assistance in areas such as digital, energy, and infrastructure, thereby enhancing its effectiveness. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Shinoda. Yes, I think this is the second time that we are hearing that a roadmap for the AOIP is needed. And of course, we all look forward to the Indo-Pacific Forum on Infrastructure next year. So it seems that there is a lot for Indonesia to work on. Yes, thank you for that. Now, let me move on to Dr. Fitra and Mr. Miyagi. We understand that ASEAN and Japan will celebrate their 50th anniversary of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation next year. It's important because Japan is the first dialogue partner to celebrate Golden Jubilee, with ASEAN. So could you both share with us how that civil society, academia, industry, and the government in ASEAN and Japan identify opportunities to promote the mainstreaming of the AOIP for its people? So perhaps Dr. Fitra, you can share with us from ASEAN point of view, and Dr. Miyagi, you can share with us from the Japanese community point of view.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Joe. So,
Yes.
So in order to develop ASEAN even further in terms of income per capita, in terms of escaping from middle income trap, we have only a very limited time. For the case of Indonesia, for example, in order to escape from middle income trap, we only have time until 2035. And within that period, we need to grow at least 6%, average. Now, if we know that we only have limited space and limited time, what should we do? In physics, there is a paradigm that is called quantum entanglement. So within this quantum entanglement, the space and time can be folded, can be augmented, as long as all variables, all elements within that quantum ecosystem entangled to each other. So by doing so we are actually seeing that if this quadruple helix ecosystem consisting of the academics, the government, also the private sectors, and also the community, if they are all entangled, the resultant will be a higher economic growth within that limited space and time. So the idea is how to we collaborate and how we can engage that very stakeholders at a very early stage. One of the possible case study, we can actually see it from the RCEP. RCEP actually engaged to the stakeholders at a very early stage. And now we are seeing that RCEP is becoming the largest economic cooperation in the world by today. And then we are seeing this will also actually create the domino effect for the regional cooperation in the future.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fitra. And Mr. Miyagi, please also share your view.
はい、ありがとうございます。冒頭にも述べましたけども、経団連はですね、その提言において、一つは連結性ですね、連結性強化に向けた ハード、ソフト両面の社会資本の整備、また、持続可能な成長の実現、さらにデジタル技術の活用、人材育成、人的交流というですね、5つの柱について ASEAN との連携競争を進めるということを掲げております。そのポイントはですね、ASEAN とともに持続可能な社会の実現に向けて、競争をしていくということでございます。来年のですね、日 ASEAN 友好協力50周年はですね、これは重要な節目でありまして、この機会を捉えて、AOIP との連携も含めて、お互いに活発に議論してですね、新しい日 ASEAN 関係の構築につなげていくということが非常に重要であるというふうに思います。その際のキーワードはですね、先ほど触れました、競争であるというふうに思います。例えば、デジタルトランスフォーメーションの推進において、日本企業自身もですね、ASEAN 諸国で生まれる有力なスタートアップと連携していくことなど、お互いがですね、成長を取り組んでいくということが必要であるというふうに思います。経団連でもですね、来年の日 ASEAN 友好協力50周年と、これを契機にですね、積極的にこれを活用してですね、双方の各界、各層との交流を通じまして、関係の強化に積極的に取り組んでまいりたいと思っております。はい、ありがとうございました。
Yes, thank you once again, Dr. Fithra and Mr. Miyagi. I think we can certainly bring home the message that the engagement with all stakeholders remains the key to growth and sustainability, and that ASEAN-Japan should work closely to accelerate green growth together. So at this juncture, we have a special guest with us. So at this juncture, we would like to invite Mr. Ishikawa to share his reflections and comments to the panel discussion. We have spoke a lot, and I think Mr. Ishikawa will be able to also share his views.
ただいまご紹介いただきました ASEAN 研究会の石川でございます。ASEAN 研究会というのはですね、日本の産官学メディアの約200名がですね、参加している ASEAN について研究するグループであります。本日、AOIP についての特別産官学対話で発言の機会をいただきましてありがとうございます。いろいろな重要な事項、論点についてはすでに専門家の方々から、議論されていると思いますので、ちょっと視点は異なるかもしれませんが、私から3点ほどコメントさせていただきたいと思います。まず最初に AOIP はインド太平洋の平和と経済的繁栄について非常に重要であるということを改めて強調したいと思います。すでに議論いただいておりますように AOIP と FOIP 自由で開かれたインド太平洋構想ですね、多くの原則を共有し共通点を多く持っておりますが、AOIP は大きな特徴があります。それは AOIP は ASEAN 主導のメカニズムを対話と協力のプラットフォームとするということであります。ご承知のように東アジアサミットなど ASEAN 主導のメカニズムは中国が参加しております。インド太平洋では中国の台頭によるさまざまな問題が起きていると、地政学的な問題が起きている点につきましては、すでに議論をいただいていると思います。ただ、インド太平洋地域の平和と経済的繁栄の実現には、中国の協力は不可欠ではないかというふうに思います。経済の分野では、中国は東アジアの GDP の5割以上を占め、大半の国の最大貿易相手国になっているのはご承知の通りであります。また、サプライチェーンでは中国は部品など中間材の供給国となって不可欠の存在となっております。特に経済連携と経済協力では中国抜きの構想というのは非現実的だというふうに言っていいと思います。2018年以降、米中間では貿易戦争、 それから米国のデカップリング政策が進められてきておりましたけれども、米中貿易は2021年にですね、増加して過去最大となっております。この事実は、インド太平洋の国々にとって中国との経済関係というのは切っても切れない関係として重要になっているということを示していると思います。インド太平洋における平和と経済的繁栄のための対話と協力のプラットフォームとして、ASEAN が中心となって ASEAN が主導しているAOIP は非常に重要であり、これを活用すべきということを改めて申し上げたいと思います。次に AOIP への協力についてであります。ASEAN の対応国は AOIP の4つの協力分野、海洋協力、連結性 SDG、経済及びその他の可能な分野への協力をすでに行っております。篠田先生がご説明されたように、日本はこの中で多分最も先行しており、89の協力プロジェクトを実施しております。それからアメリカは昨年29の AOIP プロジェクトを発表いたしましたし、オーストラリアは今年 AOIP への協力、やはり29のプロジェクトを行うことを発表しております。このように AOIP への協力というのは ASEAN プラス1の枠組みで行われていますけれども、各国の協力の内容を見ますと、重複している分野が多いと思います。シナジー効果、経験と情報の共有などによるより効果的な実施というのためにですね、ASEAN プラス1の協力に加えて ASEAN プラス例えば日本とオーストラリアなどが組んだミニラテラルな枠組みの協力も重要と思います。それからAOIP の主流化のためには今後 AOIP に協力する対応国を増やしていくということが必要であることは言うまでもありませんが、注目すべきは中国が AOIP の4つの協力分野に2国間の枠組み、すなわち ASEAN 中国戦略的パートナーシップのための行動計画を通じて協力を行っていることであります。ASEAN が中心となって中国を含めた多数国による AOIP への協力のため、協力をですね、ダイナミックに行うためのメカニズムをぜひ作っていただきたいと思います。それには民間セクターや市民社会などのが参加するということも必要だと思います。最後に経済連携のための協力について一つだけ試験を述べさせたいと思います。日本はすでに AOIP の実現に向けて多くの分野で協力を行っております。来年2023年が日本 ASEAN 友好協力30周年という、極めて重要な記念すべき年であることを考えますと、象徴的な大きなプロジェクトを実施したらどうかと思います。いろいろ皆様アイデアがあるかと思いますが、経済協力の分野では、例えば日本と ASEAN がですね、イニシアチブを取ってデジタル経済のルールを作るということはいかがでしょうか。デジタル経済の推進が今後経済的繁栄に重要なことは言うまでもありません。そして AOIP はデジタル経済を協力分野としております。ASEAN はすでに電子商取引協定を締結しております。また CPTPP と RCEP には電子商取引商が含まれております。昨年はデジタル経済パートナーシップ協定 DEPA ができましたし、今年、米国主導で立ち上がったインド太平洋経済枠組み IPF、これは先ほどご説明いただきましたけれども、デジタル経済を対象としております。ただ、これらの協定は、RCEP を除くと、ASEAN からの参加国が非常に限定をされております。例えば CPTPP にはインドネシア、タイ、フィリピンなど ASEAN の主要な6カ国は参加しておりません。DEPA は AI、イノベーションとデジタル経済、デジタルインクルージョンなど新たな分野を含んでおりますけれども、参加している国は現在シンガポール、ニュージーランド、チリの3カ国であります。こうした既存の協定をベースにですね、先進的で包括的かつ包摂的なデジタル経済のルールを 日本 ASEAN で作り、さらにインド太平洋に拡大していくということは非常に重要かつ有意義であり、来年のこの記念すべき年にふさわしいのではないかと考えます。私のコメントは以上でございます。どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you, Mr. Ishikawa, for sharing your insightful views on how ASEAN and Japan could collaborate strategically to advance and expedite the implementation of the AOIP for the benefits of the people. So you have helped us to identify some ways forward by highlighting the importance of inclusive cooperation and also something new, which is the potential of cooperation within mini-lateral frameworks. And of course, coming from Singapore myself, I also agree that cooperation in the digital economy should certainly be at the forefront. So before we go on to the next question, can I check if Ambassador Swajaya, you would like to make 2 to 3 minutes comments on what Mr. Ishikawa has shared with us?
Well, yes. Can you hear me?
Can,
Yeah.
Ambassador,
Sure.
yes.
No, I think that is really commendable ideas to be pursued, whether this is in the form of agreement or not. But I think, as you know, that Indonesia's G20 presidency, we also take digital transformation as one of our priority areas of our G20 presidency, because we understand the importance of digitalization, a digital economy for the future. And I think I also know that there are initiatives to develop some sort of FTA in digital economy, as you mentioned before, between Singapore and Chile. I think this is something that we can consider pursuing. But what need to be also elaborated beforehand is that we need to make sure that the other comprehensive economic partnership agreement like RCEP should be implemented effectively, and also all of the ASEAN bilateral FTA or SEPA should also be implemented effectively. And then, of course, the next step, we can certainly bring the idea, because the digital transformation we meant in our priorities of the G20 is also based on the fact that digitalization plays a significant role even in the middle of the COVID pandemic crisis. But also we believe that in the future as well, you know that Indonesia is one of the major players of the digital economy, with a number of the unicorns that we have, as well as a decacorn that we have. And I think this is something that need to be, I agree that this is something very concrete in terms of the digitalization and digital economy that need to be pursued. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think our colleague here, Dr. Fithra, also finds Mr. Ishikawa's sharing very interesting, and he wants to take about 1 or 2 minutes to do some reflection on that. Over to you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Ishikawa-sensei. One that I must agree with the comments from Ishikawa-sensei is actually how to create ASEAN into a common platform to become a hub for the future regionalist scheme. And the second one, as also mentioned by Ambassador Ngura, is actually about the potential of digital economy. So in that, ASEAN is actually very, very potential. But in another perspective, we are seeing also the potential of the digital divide because of the asynchronous development in infrastructure as the backbone. So that is actually the future homework for ASEAN, which is actually already considered under the 4 pillars of the AOIP, which is infrastructure readiness and infrastructure development.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Fitra. Now, before we move on to our next segment, which is a very exciting mini roundtable with the Generation Z, I have one final question, for the panelists, and I hope this will be a very interesting questions for the students here, because I understand that there are many students in our audiences this afternoon. So as such, I think it will be of interest, to us, if you could share very briefly how the young people in ASEAN and Japan could meaningfully contribute to the success of ASEAN-Japan relations, and what sort of initiatives can we have to promote greater people-to-people relations between both sides. Maybe we can, due to time constraint, we can make this brief. Each panelist can have 3 minutes each. Let's do it in reverse order. We can have Mr. Miyagi to start first, and Dr. Fitra, Prof. Shinoda, and Ambassador Swajaya. Over to you, Mr. Miyagi.
日本と、ASEAN のですね、産業界、学会、政府においてですね、さまざまな人的交流が行われるということは、極めて重要であるというふうに思います。長年にわたってですね、日本と ASEAN の人々は築いてきましたこの信頼関係というのは、日本と ASEAN 共通の財産になっております。国際情勢が不透明性を増す中で、人的交流はですね、その基盤となるというものでございます。そうした観点から日 ASEAN の若者たちがですね、互いに関心を持って、あらゆる機会にですね、参画するということが求められているというふうに思います。約半世紀前ですけども、1977年の8月にですね、当時の福田赳夫首相がですね、福田ドクトリンを発表いたしました。その中で日本と ASEAN の間で、心と心の触れ合う関係と、その構築が大事だということが、その重要性が謳われております。これは現在でも日本と ASEAN との関係の基盤として全く色あせないものと思います。将来のですね、日 ASEAN 関係を担う双方の若者が学業や研究活動、経済、文化などですね、さまざまな機会を捉えて協力していくということができれば、この心と心の触れ合う関係のさらなる発展ということは、必ず実現できるというふうに信じております。ありがとうございました。
Yes, Mr. Shinoda, please. Professor Shinoda.
So thank you, Ms. Lin. And in promoting Indo-Pacific cooperation, it is also important to strengthen people-to-people connectivity, especially human exchange among the younger generation. Actually, people-to-people connectivity is included as one of the most important pillar of cooperation under AOIP. The Genesis programs on free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP and AOIP will promote international exchange through on-site visits and exchange of views with Japanese youth and experts. In addition, cultural exchange, including Japanese language education and the introduction of Japanese culture, will be promoted through WA project. WA means the circle in English. Last year, WA circle and harmony in English. Last year, former Greece President Tanaka also participated in the Southeast Asia lecture hall. Could you turn to the next page? Last year, former Greece President Tanaka also participated in the Southeast Asia lecture hall, an online lecture program conducted by the Indonesian FPCI, where he lectured to more than 2,500 Southeast Asian students on the theme of building Indo-Pacific cooperation in 21st century Asia. And there are also various other youth exchange programs, such as the SIP for Southeast Asia and Japanese Youth Program, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology's Young Leaders Program, JICA's Project for Human Resources Development Scholarship, and many other youth exchange programs. I hope that more and more ASEAN youth will participate in these programs in the future.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Fitra.
Yeah, within my field of study, international economics, we have the so-called gravity equation. So this gravity equation is actually trying to measure the intensity of the economic cooperation, trade, investment, and so on and so forth. So as the name suggests, gravity equation is consisting of two major variables, size and also distance. So size, as a proxy, we can use GDP per capita, and so on and so forth, which is actually quite standard. But most of the time, which is the one that is actually very dominating the intensity is non-economic factors and non-physical distance factor. Non-physical distance, not distance in physics, because in physical distance, this is technology actually can augment that kind of distance. But non-physical distance is actually most of the time that matter the most. What is actually the non-physical distance? We are actually seeing cultural proximity, development proximity, language, and so on and so forth. This is actually the in some empirical studies, this actually determine the trade and investment intensities. So if we can understand each other, we can actually speak the same language. We can understand them, people and people relation. So this emotional bond is actually very, very important. So in that way, youth, people-to-people connectivity, scholarships, and then cultural, exchange and so on and so forth is actually very, very important in that kind of future engagement.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fitra. Yeah, yes, non-physical distance is very important and emotional bond. Maybe I should also start to learn some Japanese as well, Okay, we haven't forgotten about you, Ambassador Sojaya. Can I pass the floor over to you to also share with us this very intimate and close topic?
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. The other speaker mentioned earlier about the people-to-people connectivity that has already been very intensive and active. I think those who were participating before, like in Genesis, are perhaps now also young leaders in both ASEAN and Japan. I think I agree that this needs to be continued further, and this need to be. We need to also bring the new perspective of the current geopolitical situations. Perhaps in the past they did not experience that, but now I think they see that, and they are also hopefully understand and share same value, same objective on how to maintain peace and stability here in the region, as well as the prosperity of the people. This is number one. Number two, I think in Indonesia we have this, the Minister of Education has a program called Merdeka Belajar, or Indonesia Independent Learning Program, which is bringing the university students to take as they wish to choose universities, other universities in Indonesia or overseas for one semester or 2 semesters. So then they will not also obliged to take the same subject in their own university, because they will be exposed. The added value is not only interacting with other people, but also expose as well as mutually enriching each other, especially here in the region. I think this is a program that need to be also brought into the ASEAN-Japan partnership in the future. The university students can also learn in the industries or in the companies. So then when they graduate from the university, they will not only good in their education, but also ready to work immediately. So this is a program that need to be considered as well on how we are going to expand that. The program is in Indonesia, but we can expand that in the context of Indonesia, Japan, or even ASEAN Japan. I think this is another initiative that could also be taken into account to be considered. The third, since we are talking about digital transformation, and in Indonesia there are perhaps thousands of startup founders, and I believe in Japan, in ASEAN as well. So why don't ASEAN Japan Center or whoever the stakeholders could also take this to bring this startup founders, because we know that out of thousands of startups, perhaps only under than 20 or under than 10 can become a unicorn, but 100 can become successful. So then they can also learn from each other, and they can also understand from each other what are the potentials. I just would like to stop by giving an example here in Indonesia. I'm not promoting a company from the US, but I have to mention this, that Apple, for example, they have Apple Academy, which is an academy to bring young generations to be an apps developer. So outside the US, the Apple Academy is only in Indonesia, Italy, and Brazil. And in Indonesia, they have already 3. And this is, this indicates how potential this, digital economy for young generation. So I would like to suggest that perhaps one can organize like the young startup developers meeting in ASEAN and between ASEAN and Japan. I can, perhaps, recommend the one which is close to Singapore in Batam. We have a digital hub there in Batam. That can also be perhaps considered as a venue to start doing this perhaps sometime in the future. Next year. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador Sajaya. Yes, I definitely agree that joint collaboration in startups, it's really the way to go. And Batam is so close to Singapore, maybe Singapore can also be part of that. And you have also given us many ideas. Maybe I should also start planning a PhD here in Japan for that. So thank you very much again to all panelists, and I agree with all of you that people-to-people connectivity remains very important in ASEAN-Japan relations so that we can forge greater understanding and trust from a very young age. So this is exactly what Japan calls the heart-to-heart relations. It's a very warm relations, and indeed that should be the foundation of the ASEAN-Japan cooperation. So before we go on to our very exciting session with our Generation Z later, I think we might take a small break. Maybe I will pass the time over to our MC, Penny-san. You want to let us know what is happening? Thanks.
Hi, Joanne. Thank you. We will have a break time for only like 3 minutes, and then will be followed by the mini discussion. Oh, 5 minutes. Oh, our Japanese panelists needs a 5 minutes break. Okay, and then we'll be followed by the mini discussion with the young generations. Thank you so much. And while we have a break, please enjoy our video, the ASEAN women activities in Japan. Thank you so much. Peace out.
好日语，好像这种，好像这杯的，好像呢。
Hey.
I want to be the bridge between ASEAN and Japan.
好日语，好像这种，好像这杯的，好像呢。
Hey.
want to be the bridge between ASEAN and Japan.
어디지? 반사제로, 반사제 배제, 반사나.
Dear participants, if you have questions, please send to our chat box. Yeah. Dear participants, if you have a question, just please send to our chat box. And Joe, so I pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny-san. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our second segment. So according to a recent article by the Nikkei Business Magazine, Japanese youth, especially the Z generation, regards work as just one aspect of life. Oh, that's good. I totally want that for myself as well. The company is not at the center of this generation's life, unlike the current working generation. So the good thing is they are interested, to contribute to society and to achieve self-actualization in their lives. And these values could also be applicable to the youth in ASEAN. And I really believe that this is really the attitude to go. So today we have a special segment in which 4 young Japanese who are motivated to address social issues would like to share with us their plans for starting social enterprises in ASEAN and Japan. So please allow me now to welcome the 4 of them. One of them will come a little bit later, but she'll be here soon. So we have Miss Karen Meijima with us, an 18-year-old high school student who has been leading workshops to find solutions to social issues and has participated actively in ASEAN-Japan Center activities. And next we have Miss Momoko Ito. Let me introduce her first. She can come in later. Because she's working in her office. She's a 22-year-old office worker who has a passion in promoting gender equality and in addressing environmental issues. She has actually established an organization called Girl Up Tokyo. I'm very excited to hear what is this Girl Up Tokyo, to further promote gender equality, through an online platform. And we also have with us Mr. Yuya Shintani, a 24-year-old office worker who has also a non-profit organization to promote friendship and cooperation between the youth of Japan and ASEAN, and he is also an active member of the ASEAN-Japan Center. And lastly but not least, we have Mr. Izuma Soma, who is the co-founder. Miss Izuma, okay, Miss, I'm sorry. Miss Izuma Soma, who is a co-founder of the non-profit organization, the Peace Front. It sounds very interesting and has provided capacity building or learning opportunities for Japanese youth who has an interest in peace building. I have an interest in peace building too. Maybe I should also contribute to that. So thank you, Karen, Momoka, Yuya, and Izuma for being here with us. So as you are the young people and you will represent the future of the Indo-Pacific region. We would really like to hear your views on what the Indo-Pacific actually means for you and what is your aspiration, for the Indo-Pacific region, and also the reflection that you have for today's dialogue. So if you have started a non-profit organization, please also do share with us what is your motive for doing that. And I believe that this could be the most exciting segment for the day. So we are really looking forward to hear from you. So may I give the floor over to Ms. Karen San first, followed by maybe Mr. Yuya-san, Ms. Izuma-san, and then later on we will have Ms. Momoka-san when she arrives. So over to you, please. So this one is Momoka, right? Yes. Oh, Momoka Ito-san, welcome so much. I have already introduced you, so all our audience knows exactly all the good things that you have done. So later on. Yes, so since you are here, so later on, since you have just arrived, I will leave you to settle down. We will start with Ms. Karen-san, Ms. Momoka-san, Mr. Yuya-san, and then after that, Ms. Izuma-san. Yeah, okay? Oh, sorry, I'm so confused. Izuma is Izumi, right? I'm sorry, Miss Izumi. I mispronounced your name earlier. Please forgive me. I should learn my Japanese a little bit more. Thank you.
Arigatou高校3年生の前島カレンと申します。私はこれまで主に探究型学習を推薦するワークショップの学生リーダーやASEAN地域から多くいらっしゃる外国人技能実習生に興味関心があり、労働相談を聞くなどをして調査をしてきました。質問に関しては、インド太平洋地域は家であり、美しい場所だと思っています。私は以前タイに住んでいた経験があり、アジア各地に父親と旅行をしていました。その際、ASEANの国々の文化、人、歴史や自然は個性的であり、綺麗だと強く感化いたしました。また、日本でも人気がある東南アジアの食文化も美しかった印象があります。もう一つ東南アジアの国々に足を運んで驚いたのが、想像していたよりはるかに発展していたことです。インフレが整っているのももちろん、私と同年代のみんなが日常的にパソコンを利用しています。私は来年からマレーシアにある大学に進学する予定でいます。歴史背景などの知識を踏まえた上で、東南アジアの美しさを再認識し、三大宗教はどう共生しているのかを学びたいです。東南アジアでの留学生活で培った学びを踏まえ、ASEAN と日本の架け橋になれる女性を目指していきたいと思っております。よろしくお願いします。
Thank you, Ms. Karen-san. Are you ready for us, Ms. Momoka-san? And actually, I want to wish Ms. Karen-san a very good studies in Malaysia. It is just next to Singapore, so please visit Singapore whenever you have time.
I will travel. I will go there, definitely. Yes. Thank you.
And also, don't forget Indonesia. Indonesia is next to also Malaysia.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. If Ms. Momoka-san is ready to share. Yes. Later, okay. So what about maybe I go to Mr. Yuya-san first, and then Mr. Izumi first. Sure. We are very flexible. Just do as you are very comfortable with. Yes. Please share with us also what sort of inspiration that you have for the Indo-Pacific, if you can. Thank you.
はい、わかりました。ありがとうございます。改めまして、この貴重な機会をいただきありがとうございます。ピースフロント代表の相馬と申します。で、質問にいただいてたピースフロントの由来を一応先にお話しさせていただきますと、日本語に直すと平和の前線という意味で、ピースフロントは立ち上げているんですけれども、私たち平和を目指して、学生、主に日本の若者、と一緒に活動をしているんですけれども、平和っていうものは完成することがないと私たちは考えています。なので、つまり、より良くし続けていくことだったりとか、前進し続けることが、どの年代に行っても必要であると、大切だと考えています。なので、私たちは常に、平和を目指して前進し続けるということを大事にしながら、ブレずに活動を取り組んでいくために、ピースフロントという名前で今活動をしております。で、私自身のお話にもなるんですけれども、私の最終的な目標としては、産官学の連携をもって、社会課題解決をする架け橋を担うために、これから活動していく若者の育成と機械連携というところを、活動していきたいと思っています。私自身はこれまでビジネス面、例えばカンボジアでの、工場で働く方々の賃金を上げるために、生産性を上げるプロジェクトなどで携わってきたりとか、来年は東京大学大学院の国際協力専攻学で研究者への一歩目として、成長も目指しています。で、これまでの経験をもってしても、特に環境問題と、ビジネス面でのバランスを取ることが非常に難しいと思っているんですけれども、その分非常に重要なところだと思っています。で、バランスをとって成長していくためには、やはりその一カ国だけでは、取り組みが難しい部分だったりとか、その民間だけや政府だけの取り組みでは、取り組みきれない部分も出てくると思っています。で、そこで各国の情報共有や産官学の連携がこれからどんどんますます必要になってくる時代になると思っているんですけれども、それは本当に今すぐできることだけではなくて、これから10年後、20年後の長期的な視点を持ちながら未来を作っていくっていう、この若者を巻き込んで実施していくことが非常に重要になってくると思っています。で、特に日本においては、この社会課題解決や国際協力の業界は、その学生目線、手が届きにくく、結構その能力や知識をこの学生時代にどう身につけたらいいのかっていうのが、検索しても出てこないというところや、機械へのアクセスが非常に難しいなというところを、私自身学生の頃からその取り組みを続けていたりとか、今でも、学生向けに座談会やプロジェクトを行っているんですけれども、そこでもまだ声として上がってくるところにあります。なので今回、AOIP の取り組みに即して、ザ・ピースフロントでも、大学生から小学生向けにプロジェクトを実施していきたいと思っています。一応内容として今考えているものは、この ASEAN とのつながりを作っていくことや、現状を知ることだけではなくて、自分ごと化するための経験づくりや友達をそれこそ各国に増やせるような体験を多くの若者に向けて提供できればなと思っております。ちょっと長くなりましたが。はい。私から以上です。
大丈夫です。
はい。
Thank you, Ms. Izumi-san. I think the work that you are doing is indeed very meaningful, and maybe the ASEAN-Japan Center can also organize more activities, for the university students next year, and you have a chance to use such a platform to advance your peace front. So now let me pass over to Mr. Yuya-san to also do your sharing.
はい、ありがとうございます。ジョアン先生、本日はファシリテートありがとうございます。また会場の先生方、スタッフの皆々様、本日は若者に、私たちにお話の機会をくださってありがとうございます。私、新谷優也と申します。普段は民間企業で事業開発をしながら、プロダクトスタートアップの執行役員とか、あとは NPO ピースフロントの理事を務めております。私にとって最も興味深い最近のニュースは、日本ASEANセンター様、 ここと一緒に、日本 ASEAN 友好協力50周年記念の、Z 世代企画、コミュニティ開発のお仕事をご一緒するべく、検討を進めているところです。平林さん、ぜひ一緒にやりましょう。はい。本日はよろしくお願いします。改めて、ジョアン先生のご質問に戻らせていただきます。ASEAN との関係において、ビジネスを通じた発展が顕著であることはもちろん、ジョアン先生がご質問にあるようなマルチな仕事の仕方が隆盛していると感じます。幸いにも私自身は大学在学時に ASEAN でプロジェクトを推進した経験がありまして、関係を深めることができました。思い出としては、カンボジアの水上村の上で暮らすコンポンルアン村の人と一緒に水浴びをし、フィリピンの美しい島々でもぎたてのココナッツを食べ、ミャンマーでオリジナルのロンジーを仕立ててもらい、ベトナムで大量のバイクにひかれそうになりながら、当時地下鉄を工事していた日本企業の日本国旗を眺めながら街を歩いたのは非常にいい思い出です。ASEAN 地域との国際協力活動やビジネスにおいて図らずも架け橋となってきた私たちは、社会人になった今でもこうして会社組織や国をまたいでマルチな取り組みにチャレンジをし続けています。その上で私からの意見を端的に申し上げます。2点あります。一つは、次世代を担う若者にリソースを大胆に投資してほしいということです。もう一つは、そのアクセシビリティの拡大に力を貸していただきたい。この2つです。前提として、日本における Z 世代と呼ばれる21歳、25歳以下の若者たちにおいては、SDGs や社会課題解決、海外への意識はかつてないほど高まっています。その次世代の若者が、もし ASEAN 地域に夢や興味を抱いたときに、必要な資金や先駆的なプロジェクトや成長できる環境があることが何より大事と考えています。これは ASEAN 地域の若者の日本への興味にも同じことが言えます。私たちは相互に学び合って、地球規模課題にも共に立ち向かうことができる関係を育てるために、ぜひ私たち若者に機会やリソースを割いていただきたいなと考えます。その最もインパクトが期待できる効果的なミックスを考えることも、私たちは責任を持って未来に向けて考えています。2つ目のアクセシビリティについて、本日のような貴重な機会にもアクセスできる若者っていうのは限られています。仮に ASEAN 地域に強く関心を持った若者がいたとして、残念ながら普通の学生は平林さんに会うことはできないし、普通の社会人は先生方の名前を知ることもありません。私がこの度 ASEAN センター様とのお取り組みを検討していることに、私自身勝手ながら使命感を感じています。これだけの有識者の方々の意思は間違いなくここに存在し、先生方のお話の中でも若者の育成を語ってくださっている、そういう事実があります。まさにこの場に存在しているこの機会について、私たち自身が一人でも多くの次世代リーダーを羽ばたかせるべく努力してまいります。もし今日ご着席の先生方が日本 ASEAN 地域の架け橋を志す若者に出会ったならば、ぜひその手を差し伸べ、私たちが手を取り合って未来を作れるよう力をお貸しください。AOIP においても、すべての礎をなすのは相互信頼であると考えます。今回のような固めな議論の先においても、心と心の触れ合いの未来に投資がなされるスタンダードが作れるように、私自身身を引き締めて役割を果たしたいと考えています。今日はありがとうございます。
Thank you, Mr. Yuya-san. I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to visit so many ASEAN countries. Maybe you should visit Singapore or Indonesia to try the durian, Not yet. You should.
Indonesia.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Please come and eat the durian. And of course, we have taken note of. of your suggestion that perhaps we need more funding for the youth. Maybe ASEAN, can consider setting up a special fund for youth to start special projects, and all these very interesting and new ideas that we have, and to provide greater accessibility, to some of the work that we are doing. So thank you so much. Now I would like to move to Ms. Momoka-san. I'm sorry, maybe I pronounced your name wrongly earlier. I hope I get it correct this time. We'd like to hear from you as well on your views on what you want the Indo-Pacific to be, for your generation in the future.
はい、ありがとうございます。22歳で今社会人1年目の伊藤桃香と申します。私は大学2年生の頃に国際連合の一つの企画であるガールアップという女性を推進する運動の東京バージョンとしてガールアップ東京という団体を立ち上げてきました。そこでは私の興味分野であるジェンダー平等な社会を作るを目的に、意見を交換しやすいインスタメディアで発信を行ってきました。で、ご質問いただいたものの、インド太平洋の地域に対して私にとってどんな場所かっていうものに関しては、私にとっては帰る場所だと思っております。で、私は大学1、2年生の頃にバックパッカーで東南アジアを一人で旅をした経験があります。で、高校生までは全く海外経験だったりとかなくて、恐怖心の方が勝っていたんですけれども、そこを訪れた際に現地の方々が案内してくださったりとか、拙い英語でも対話をしてくださいました。そこで感じたことに関しては、東南アジアの方とか ASEAN の方々は日本人を快く受け入れてくださっているんだっていうふうに感じました。で、日本人だからなんとかだよねっていう、差別のようなものは一切感じませんでした。また、大学2年生の頃に、タイのタオ島と言われる島で、スキューバダイビングの免許を取ったという経験があります。私はそこで野生のジンベエザメだったりとか、いろいろな綺麗な魚だったりとか、カメとかを実際に自分の目で見ました。で、思った以上に、本当に想像以上に美しい海を拝見することができ、すごくいい経験だったなと思っております。で、このような経験をもとに、もっと私はいろんな方、それこそ日本の方だったりとか、いろんな国の方に ASEAN の地域の素晴らしいところを伝えていきたいなというふうに思っていて、で、知らないで終わらせたくないっていう思いが強くあります。そのために私自身はもっといろんな国に行って現地を知って、国と国だったりとか、人と人をつなげる役割の人間になっていきたいなと思っております。ありがとうございます。
Yes, thank you, Ms. Momoka-san. And I'm sure tourism, tourism is a very important aspect of the ASEAN-Japan cooperation. I'm not sure if you know this, but Japan is the top tourist destination for countries in Southeast Asia. And my institute actually came up with a survey called the State of Southeast Asia Survey every year. And every year we have very similar findings that Japan is actually the top country for tourism. And I really also hope that in Japan, Southeast Asia can also be one of the top country for tourism. And there are many interesting places. I lived in Indonesia for more than 6 years. And in fact, Indonesia is so big that I barely even managed to visit 10%. So there are lots of interesting places. Please come to visit, and please get your friends also to come to visit. So I thank you very much for you, all my friends, for sharing. And I really wish you the best in your endeavor. Everything that you are doing is very good, not only for Japan, but also if you can push it on to make it into an ASEAN-Japan platform, I think it will benefit Southeast Asia as well. So thank you for being so brave to come to share with us, with hundreds of audiences here today, and all the best to your work. And right now, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to our Q&A session. So this is the perfect opportunity to pose any questions that you have to our eminent and distinguished panelists right here, and also Ambassador Swajaya online. Please let us know if you have any questions for us to answer in regards to the ASEAN outlook on the Pacific. So today, right now, I already have a first question from Professor Ishikawa. He would like to hear more about the roadmap to mainstreaming the AOIP. So, and perhaps I have even more questions coming from Penny. Yes, maybe we answer the first question first on that roadmap, and then later on I will come to the second question.
私のへの質問じゃなくて、私からの質問です。すいません。ちょっと質問がなかったようなんで、させていただきました。今日のパネリストの方にお答えいただければと思います。特にそうですね、大使、あるいは、インドネシアの先生ですね、石木槍先生ですか、ご回答いただければと思います。
Thank you, Prof. Ishikawa. Yes, I do agree that the perfect person to answer this question is Ambassador Swajaya, because you will be part of the Indonesia chairmanship next year, and you also talked about earlier the roadmap to mainstream the AOIP. So could you give us a little bit more information on what sort of roadmap would this be, and would it be something that we can expect to see next year during your chairmanship?
Thank you. Very briefly, I think the decision to mainstream the AOIP to all of the pillars of the ASEAN community is certainly the next step after the endorsement of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. And with Japan, I think we started already on the connectivity as well as infrastructure. This includes as well digital connectivity. But I think we could also expand further, like, when we are talking about, I heard about the presentation of the young generations just now. Some of them invented this Young for Peace initiative, something like that. I was just participated a week ago in Vientiane in Laos as a workshop on youth peace and security. So we in Indonesia, in ASEAN, we have an Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. So I think we need to also bring the younger generations on the issue of peace building as well as security, for them to understand that despite the fact that there are challenges and there are difficult challenges we are facing, but I think we have a number of instruments and principles that we can apply, so then all of those disputes will not turn into a conflict, so then we can still maintain peace and stability. So this is on the field of peace. But also a number of activities like, this is a big discussion now on energy transition. This can also be elaborated further, because Indonesia itself has already been committed to do an early retirement of the coal power generations. But in order to do that, we need to have an alternative source of energy. We need to have technology. We need to have collaboration in terms of where the funding could come from, so that we will be able to achieve our common goals to maintain the increase of temperature that up to only 1.5 degrees in the context of the climate change. So there are a number of activities that we can identify, and I hope that with the mainstreaming and identification of some of the concrete initiative and project, this can be divided into what is the short term, what is the medium term, and also what is the long term. I hope this can also be something that can be developed by ASEAN that will attract all of the dialogue partners to participate and to also join not only ASEAN plus one, but also multiple stakeholders, multiple countries can also participate in that initiative. So with that, then I think the idea of making people to talk to each other through concrete collaborations will prevent any other potential conflict in the region. That we are very fortunate, despite the fact that we know what is happening in Europe, which is not really good, and we are fortunate that we still have this dialogue be maintained, where ASEAN is playing a very active role in order to maintain that, and the maintenance of the dialogue can also prevent us turning the geopolitical competition into conflicts. So I would like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Swadjaya. Yes, I agree that in any roadmap, we need to have the immediate, medium-term, and the long-term goal to fulfill that. And of course, funding is very important. It has also been something that was already mentioned by the youth. So, I really wish Indonesia all the best as it leads ASEAN to coming up with this roadmap. Now we have another interesting question is related to the youth. I mean, since we have 4 youths right here, so we have a question asking if for young Japanese people to experience working in ASEAN, and for young people or students from ASEAN to experience working in Japan, maybe it could be an internship, mutual understanding for cooperation and value creation together will be important to build that bridge of trust. And I think the person who asked the question feels that it's important to grow people, and she would like to know our opinion, whether it would be difficult for individual students to do that, and how can we, overcome such an obstacle. Maybe she said that it is a question, for the young Generation Z. But maybe I will open up for any of our panelists here if they would want to make a comment, and then maybe I can pass also to our very brave young people here if anybody would also like to share something. So from amongst us, including Ambassador Swadjaya, if you like to provide some views on that question, please let us know online. Younger. I thought Dr. Fitra is a youth. He looks like he's a youth. So I turned to him so that maybe he has something to share. But if not, I would be very happy to hear from our special young generation guests. For Shinoda Amiyaki, you like this question? Please let me know if you want to respond. I leave it to them.
The youngest of all, high school student.
Do we have the youngest and the bravest young school student to share? Maybe just let us know what sort of obstacle that you face. Just let us know the challenges, and the ASEAN Japan Center will do the important job to try to help you overcome that obstacle.
Karen-san and me going to talk.
Very good, very good.
English.
No, you can use Japanese, no problem. We have fantastic interpreters here.
Thank you. 私が大学選ぶ際にいろいろ考えたのがやはり金銭面のことで、やっぱり今、コロナが明けて少しは安くなったと思うんですが、飛行機の時のお金だったり、 あとは、そこで生活する時のお金だったり、奨学金がもう少しあったら嬉しいなっていうのが正直なところで、私は日本人学生支援機構の方を応募させていただいたんですが、その他にも民間団体が提供している奨学金にも応募しようと思っています。でもやはり競争率が高かったり、それほど教養がある方が受かりやすかったり、ある程度の採点基準というかはあると思うんですが、はい、お金の面で結構迷いましたね。海外大学と日本の大学をどちらにするかっていうのを。あとは言語の方では、私がもともとタイに住んでいた際にインターナショナルに通っていたので、あまり英語を使うのは困っていないかったので、そこは大丈夫でした。でも周りの友達とかは海外大学を目指したいって言っていたんですが、やっぱり英語の面だったり、その語学力の方で心配をして辞める子たちも多くいましたです。
Yes, thank you, Karen-san. Yes, Mr. Yuya-san, we want to hear from you.
はい、ありがとうございます。日本語で失礼します。カレンさんの方から、言語だったり、お金っていう、いわゆるミクロな、問題について触れてくれたので、僕からは、そのマクロな、少し大きい視点の、課題感をお話ししようと思います。一言で言うと、未来がどう描けるかどうかに懸念があります。で、例えば、日本の間では、アメリカの留学とか、イギリスに留学行きますとか、いうのは、結構ポピュラー、流行ってます。で、それはなぜかというと、英語を駆使してどういう仕事に就きたいとか、アメリカは日本よりこういうふうに給料が高くて、こういうキャリアを描けるからっていうのが明確にあるからだと考えてます。で、それに対して、ASEAN と日本は距離こそ近くて、食べ物もお互い美味しいと思えるくらいの文化の距離にいますが、そこのじゃあ国にずっと住むのか、何かお互いの国から持ち帰るべき知識や決定的情報があるのか、ここについてお互いが確証を持ちづらい状況かと思います。で、一昔前、少し前に、ASEAN 地域から技能実習生になる方々が日本にもたくさんいらっしゃいました。その方々は、その日本のいわゆる技術っていう意味の先進性を、持ち帰って、ご出身の地域、国に持って帰るであろう明確な目的があったからこそ勇気を持ってこれたんだと思います。で、日本人は今はちょっと難しい状況ですけど、自分たちはまだ先進国だと思っています。ので、ここから、東南アジアに行って自分たちの、キャリアがどう良くなっていくのか、人生がどう豊かになっていくのかっていうのは、我々のようなちょっとマクロな視点を持った人たちが提案していくことによって、これから後ろの世代の懸念はどんどん和らいでいくんじゃないかと思います。あとこのどう魅力的かを一緒に考えたいなと考えます。
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yuya-san and Ms. Karen-san. I think you have raised some very important and pertinent questions which I can personally identify with you. First of all, you mentioned about scholarships, and I think one possible opportunity is actually to increase the number of scholarships both sides. And of course, English, is always a challenge. So perhaps even ASEAN universities should find ways to have courses in English, for students like, for example, from Japan to participate in, and maybe in Japan, more universities can offer English courses, for the foreign students. And of course, maybe another suggestion she mentioned is for the private sector, the Kedaran, to also join efforts, with the government to open up scholarships. And maybe after the scholarship, you can give internship also to international students. So these are good good. And of course, Mr. Yuya-san raised a deeper issue of exchange of technical capabilities, really what Japanese students can learn from ASEAN countries, because we all know that you are very advanced. We come here to learn about human resource, about technologies, and the latest information. So perhaps it is also time for ASEAN countries to think about what could be something that is leading, a leading industry for them, some leading technology for them, so that even international students like from Japan can actually value add to it, but one thing for sure that you have mentioned that is very important, cultural proximity. I think we are very comfortable in each other country, not just in terms of food, but in terms of culture understanding. We are very warm people and we enjoy being friendly to each other. And I think, this is a very important starting point. So it's not just about the US or the UK, but, I hope that within the next decade or so, ASEAN countries may make a good option, for all of you to actually come as well. Singapore is a very good example. And Indonesia, I can say because I live in 6 years there, anytime I will go back to Indonesia, it's very vibrant. There are many things that you can also learn from Indonesia. Vibrant and random, and one thing, you can enjoy very cheap food. I think we all really like to enjoy cheap food and the large variety, of food. Anything you want to eat, you can find it there. You can find Japanese food in any of the ASEAN countries. That's something for sure. Okay, now I want to come to the last question. And you are so popular today because the last question is actually also about youth. But I also hope that our panelists can take this question. So this question asks, there are exchange programs between ASEAN region and Japanese youth, such as the Genesis. I think Ambassador Shinoda talked about it earlier, and they are very important to expand regional connectivity. So as we approach the 50th anniversary of Japan-ASEAN friendship cooperation next year, are there any concrete measures that are being considered to deepen exchange programs for young people? I think Ambassador Shinoda may have touched upon that earlier. Maybe you might want to reiterate some of that for our audience. Thank you. And of course, after you, Ambassador Swajaya or any one of our panelists may add on, please.
This time, so please allow me to respond to your question in Japanese. Is that okay? Okay. 東南アジアと日本との、その青年交流のプログラムですけれども、今日お話をさせていただいたのは、ジェネシスプログラムという、ASEAN の、特に大学生、高校生、あるいは、若い社会人の方を日本に呼ぶようなプログラム。それからあと、東南アジア青年の船だとかですね。あと、グリップス、私たちの大学の方でも、ヤングリーダーシッププログラムという、ASEAN の、将来有望な学生を日本に呼んで、そこでいろいろと SDGs だとか開発協力の、プログラムを教えたいと、そういった話を、いたしました。で、あと、皆様方に、その他の、機会としてお伝えしたいのは、今日ちょっとお話を聞いていて、やっぱり東南アジアと日本の学生同士の交流みたいなことをもう少し進めていきたいというお話があって、例えば、グリップスの方で、付き合いがある、インドネシアのフォーリンポリシーコミュニティオブインドネシアという、シンクタンクなんですけども、そこは東南アジアに、合わせて、多分、50とか100とか、そういった提携している大学があって、そこの学生さんと、もうネットワークを持ってですね、いつも、2000人とか3000人ぐらい東南アジアの学生が参加するような、先ほどお話をしたサウスイーストエイジアレクチャーホールっていうね、そういう取り組みを日本政府の支援のもとやっていたりして、そういったところに東南アジアの学生さんだけじゃなくて、日本人の学生さんにも参加していただいて、自由に意見交換をしてもらうっていうのは一つあると思います。もちろん日本は ASEAN センターも FPCI と非常に強いつながりがあるんで、そういったプログラムにね、いろいろと協力していただければいいと思いますし、それから、そういう大学以外で、より、 アントレプレナーシップって起業家同士の協力でいうと、経済産業省だとかジェトロがアジアデジタルトランスフォーメーション ADX って言ってるんですけど、そういうプログラムをやって、それは日本の企業と、それからASEAN にあるいわゆるスタートアップ企業だとかデジタルプラットフォームとの間の具体的なそのビジネスの協業ですね。そういったものを支援していて、それはジェトロの方で、そういうアジア DX に参加するためのさまざまな情報提供だとか、ビジネスマッチングだとか、あるいは実際具体的なアドバイスを行ったりとかっていう、そういうカスタマイズされた支援を日本の企業のだとか ASEAN の企業に対して行っているので、そういったものをぜひとも活用していただければいいと思います。あとは最後になりましたが、今日若い方たちのお話を聞いて、皆さんそのアジアあるいは東南アジアと日本の架け橋になりたいというお話はとても勇気づけられました。私も若い時にタイだとか、あとちょうど上海からイスタンブールまでユーラシア大陸をずっと旅行したりしてですね、そういった時に若い時にそういうイマージングエコノミーのね旅行をねして、でそれをまた社会人になってからもフィリピンとかタイにで実際働くことになりましたけど、ぜひとも役立てていただきたいと思います。昔、戦前に国際連盟の事務次長をやった新渡戸稲造さんが我太平洋の架け橋とならんという、そういう言葉をね残してるんですけど、皆さんがぜひともアジア太平洋かあるいはインド太平洋の架け橋となるべく将来志を持って頑張っていただければと思います。私の方からは以上です。
ありがとうございます。
Thank you, Professor Shinoda. You can see here his experience in the Philippines, Thailand, and other places has made him so successful today, you know, and he understands ASEAN well. What about the other panelists? Do you have anything to add on, including Ambassador Swajaya?
Yeah, can I just very briefly...
Yes.
In terms of scholarship, I think we need to increase the scholarship program, including also the program I mentioned to you before in Indonesia, where the independent study program that is being promoted by the Minister of Education in Indonesia, so that we can bring Indonesian youth to Japan to study in the university, but not the whole academic year, only one semester or 2 semesters, so that they can be exposed into the culture that the Indonesian government is also having a scholarship offered to the Japanese as well, but it was stopped for the time being because of the COVID situation. I hope this is going to be resumed again. This is also another opportunity to bring the interaction between the younger generations. I think this is not only in Japan that people would like to go to the US to study. Here as well in Indonesia, I believe in Singapore as well. But then one has to aware that we perhaps in the past we just take ourselves for granted that we know each other well, but then there was no big investment made in terms of bringing the interactions among the younger generation through academic activities that need to be promoted. They can learn. Indonesian can learn more in Japan. Japanese can also learn more in ASEAN. In terms of the younger generation interaction, I think the animation movie from Japan is very popular. Everybody in Indonesia knows about that. And now the K-pop from Korea is also very popular. We need, this kind of, exchange to be further enhanced and further deepened. And I think there are a lot of opportunity for younger generations to learn more about the countries in ASEAN and to work more with the people in ASEAN, because, like for instance, the Youth for Peace, I think we are also now in the process of making this platform in ASEAN. So then we will be able to have many younger generation, not only in ASEAN, but also in the partners countries of ASEAN, including in Japan, to talk about, peace, conflict. Conflict should not necessarily in terms of military conflict, but also conflict because of the environmental issues, conflict because of the misunderstanding in terms of the culture and so on and so forth. So I think we should invest more in the interaction between the younger generations, because they are going to be the leaders of our regions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Swajaya. You just reminded me on how successful Japanese animation is. It's your culture icon today. My son spends 20 hours a day watching Japanese animation. Next time, I will send him here to learn about that. Huh? Every kind. It's playing all the time in my house. So Japan has come to Singapore. So any of our other panelists would like to say something?
はい。じゃあ、応援も含めてですけど、日本っていうのはやっぱ島国で非常に同質性があるわけですけども、これからやっぱり多分日本の若い人はとにかく外は広いよっていうことなんですね。扉を開けよう、外は広いぞっていう、やっぱりその外にやっぱ出ていかないと、日本の将来もないっていうまずことでしょうから、あらゆる機会を見つけてやっぱりダイバーシティを自分で体現していくっていうことがもう絶対必要だと思うんですね。英語の話ありましたけど、英語は日本の教育も随分変わって、今小学生からもですね、もう英会話の授業入ってきてるので、多分皆さんのもう一つ下ぐらいの代になると、もう多分英語困らなくなると思います。だから皆さんは今まだちょっとね、その Z 世代って微妙なところなので、でも我々と比べたらもうはるかに英語の問題なくなっているので、もう英語を恐れることはないんですよ、多分。で、あとお金の問題はもちろん、今、経団連の代表としてはあんまり昔のことは言えませんが、我々の会社も頑張ってますし、やっぱり奨学金とかをですね、やっぱその交流するための奨学金みたいなのもう少しね、今その学業優秀とかそういうカテゴリーで奨学金出ちゃうので、ダイバーシティを深めたいっていう感じの、奨学金の考え方はあんまりないと思うんですよ。それは確かに非常に今日気づきの視点がありました。なるほどねって思いました。それからさっきアメリカ行っちゃうよっていう話なんですけど、みんなアメリカ行かなくていいわけですよ。逆にアジアは今行けばニッチな、むしろね、価値が高くなるかもしれないわけですよ。で、結局アメリカとヨーロッパっていうのはもう人口減少が起きていて、衰退期に入っていくわけですね。これあんまり言うすぐ問題かもしれませんけど、かなり成熟しちゃってるわけですね。で、アメリカも実は移民で補ってるんだけど、必ずしもダイバースしてないと僕は思うんですね。で、そうやって見ると、もうアフリカ、インド、ASEAN なんですよ。明らかに伸びるのは。なので、やっぱりこれからどこが伸びるかって考えたときに、ASEAN にコミットされるっていうのは、皆さんの将来にとっては非常にいいニッチ戦略になると思うので、そういうふうに考えたらいいんですよ。で、すべて、アメリカンスタンダードじゃなくヨーロッパとかアメリカのね、大学が作ってきた、あれで経済別に回ってるわけでも何でもないし、うまくいってるわけでも何でもない。実はやっぱこれから大事なのは、日本と ASEAN がね、協力をして、今何が起きてるかっていうと、いろんなグローバルスタンダードっていうのは、EU が作るわけですよ。当たり前なんですよね。20数カ国の先進国がね、ガーッと集まって、スタンダード決められちゃうわけですよ。と、アメリカは一国だから、世界のスタンダード決められてないわけですよ。じゃあ、その EU みたいなことを、じゃあ日本と ASEAN 協力してやると、すごいパワーになるんですよね。だからその全部 EU がスタンダード、グローバルスタンダードを決めるんじゃなくて、日本と ASEAN が協力して、いろんなスタンダードを決めていくと、もう全然違う世界できるので、なので、おすすめはですね、アメリカばっかり行くことはないんです。そうです。ニッチで、やっぱちゃんと。もう一個はですね、 皆さんが ASEAN と仕事をするいい方法があるんですよ。それは、我々のようなですね、今ちょっと経団連忘れて AGC の副社長として言いますけど、我々はすごくその、国際化が進んだ会社なんですね。で、アジアに、2万数、3万人近い、仲間がいるんです、我々は。で、実は日本人は、我々の企業6万人近いんですけど、2割しかいないんですよ。みんな海外に仲間がいて、アジアにたくさん人がいます。なので当然ですから、そういうグローバル会社の企業ですね、皆さんが例えば選ぶ、あるいはコラボレーションすれば、自然にアジアと接点ができるので、そういう方法もあると思いますので、おすすめです。はい。
Thank you, Mr. Miyagi, for very wise advice, for the youth. I can't agree more that Asia is the growth zone today. You can look around, but there will be no place in the world that grows faster than Asia today. Dr. Fitra says that he has 1 minute to make some final comments. Over to you.
So as you mentioned earlier, but the Asian century. So this is the Asian century. So we are the future, actually, not the West, but the East. And then the secret of successful free-flowing activities and cooperation is actually sustainable financing. And I think in that sense, for example, for the Japanese Chambers of Commerce, Keidanren should actually become more engaged into this regional cooperation scheme. So one of the most pragmatic scheme is actually scholarships. I got my scholarship from the Keidanren ecosystem, so from the Mitsubishi Corporation. So yeah, in that sense, I can understand Japan more than others, for example. So in the future, we need to create those kind of initiatives in order to become more engaged to each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Fitra. He's the alumni, of Japanese scholarship. That's why he's here today, and an expert on ASEAN as well. Okay, I think we have come to the end of the question and answer segment. I'm sure we have more, but due to time constraint, we have to stop here. Thank you very much for our friends from Gen Z, your time for joining us. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, yes. Thank you. Thank you for staying through with us for this entire dialogue. Please allow me 2 minutes to wrap up this session so that we can have some concrete takeaways. And then after that, I will pass the time over to Penny-san. So today, I think we had the privilege to hear the insights and views of our very eminent speakers here from the government, the academia, industry, and the civil society. I think we have been presented with very comprehensive perspective on this important topic of accelerating the implementation and mainstreaming the AOIP. So there were several priority areas that were identified today, such as the importance of digital partnership, sustainable and green growth, strengthening connectivity, and people-to-people linkages, as well as human resource development, among many others, to further boost ASEAN and Japan strategic alignment. And at the same time, I think such cooperation will help contribute to furthering the common goals and aspirations of the AOIP and Japan free and open Indo-Pacific. So we also heard from Ambassador Swajaya earlier that Indonesia will be working on a plan of action for the AOIP, and we definitely will be looking forward to that next year, Ambassador. And we know that ASEAN-Japan cooperation in the Indo-Pacific will no doubt promote a more competitive, resilient, connected, and sustainable ASEAN that will equip it for us to face the challenges not only today, but also tomorrow. So I think in this dialogue, we are once again reminded on the importance of cooperation, not just G to G, but also it needs to involve all stakeholders from the industry, civil society, and the academia, and also the grassroots, and of course our youths, to ensure that the benefits of regional integration and engagement reaches to the people, like all of us. So with that, And really, in the interest of time, I would now like to pass the floor back to our MC, Ms. Penny San, for later on for our closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe, for facilitating the AOIP Dialogue Forum today. Now, may I invite Secretary General of the ASEAN-Japan Center, Dr. Chris Hirabayashi, to deliver the closing remarks. Thank you, Dr. Chris.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to the excellent speakers, distinguished panelists, and also very motivated young people, and my colleagues. I think the new world is on the horizon. But it could be more unpredictable than any of us can possibly imagine. That is why you said you're not unpredictable, because the world is not unpredictable. But people like you, like a people, the experts like you, accommodate, flexible, dynamic, and very comprehensively explain what is going on, can change the world. I'm sure people like you again work together, communicate across the generation, regardless age, gender, background. Definitely, we move the world. We can move the world so that Indo-Pacific is stable, peaceful, and prosperous for all, not only in the ASEAN, Japan, but also world. Thank you very much for excellent contribution. I learned a lot from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chris, for the points you made and taking this opportunity. I'd like to extend my special thanks to you for sharing your expertise, your guidance and encouragements during the preparation time for this forum. Thank you so much. And before we end the session, I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Yuka Kubota, to close our today's dialogue forum. Dr. Kubota, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. Upon closing the dialogue forum, on behalf of ASEAN-Japan Center, I'd like to extend our deepest appreciation to all panelists for great facilitator Joanne, also support and cooperation received from all the ASEAN-Japan Center members and the supporting partners of the dialogue forum, namely MOFA Indonesia, Mission of Japan to ASEAN, GRIPS, Kedanren, Institute of Asian Studies Asia University, Next Policy Indonesia, ICS Singapore, and ESAL Studio, who greatly helped us to make this dialogue forum become a success. And of course, last but not least, we appreciate great contribution made by representatives of young people. Distinguished guests and participants, thank you very much for your participation. We hope that the dialogue forum was productive and served your purpose. Please fill out the survey upon exiting the link when it will be circulated to your email address. As my colleague Penny mentioned at the beginning, next year marks the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation. We are planning to hold several activities to celebrate that remarkable moment. So please stay tuned and update it on our homepage. So we look forward to seeing you again in our future programs for this meaningful 2023. So for now, please stay healthy and have a restful night. Thank you.
now we close our session today, and we will have the photo session for all the panelists and the young generation Z's. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you so much, participants, and thank you. Closing video. Zina, it's all. Bapak Negara Sawajaya, thank you very much for your excellent contribution. Thank you very much. 石川先生、ありがとうございました。本当にありがとうございました。非常にうまくいきました。Thank you very much, Ambassador が。
ありがとうございました。
Bye bye.